are we ready to start?
We're ready.
All right. Got my gavel back. I call to order this regular meeting of the City of Campbell City Council on this Tuesday, September 15th, 2020. This regular City Council meeting is conducted via telecommunication as in compliant with the provisions of the Brown Act and Executive Order N-2920 issued by the governor. This City Council meeting is being live streamed on Channel 26, the city's website, and YouTube. Deputy City Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilmember Waterman.
Here.
Councilmember Bybee.
Present.
Councilmember Reznikov.
Here.
Vice Mayor Gibbons.
Here.
Mayor Landry.
Present. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Special presentations and proclamations, there are none. Communications and petitions, there are no communications and petitions. At this point, our agenda item is oral request. This is the portion of the meeting reserved for persons wishing to address the City Council on any matter not on the agenda. City Clerk, do we have any public speakers?
We do not.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to make some mayor announcements. The City of Campbell continues to work closely with our partnering agencies to monitor how the coronavirus is impacting our communities. We are actively monitoring the information provided by the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and reviewing guidance provided by the county's public health department. We continue to take proactive steps to prioritize health and safety of our employees and of our community members. Our focus is on to maintain essential services and keep you informed. Be heard on November 3rd. Voting is now easier than ever in Santa Clara County. The Voters' Choice Act emphasizes the convenience for voters. All registered voters will get a ballot mailed to them automatically and can vote by mail using the prepaid envelope. Completed ballots can also be submitted in any of the conveniently placed ballot boxes. Voters who prefer to vote in person can still do so at any of the voting centers that will be open throughout Santa Clara County starting October 31st. Voting centers will offer sanitary in-person options. For more information, please visit sccvote.org. The city's clerk's office is currently accepting applications for an unscheduled vacancy on our Civic Improvement Commission and 2 vacant positions on our Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. To be eligible for this appointment as a voluntary advisory commission, applicants must reside within the boundaries of City of Campbell limits and be at least 18 years of age. For more information about the Civic Improvement Commission and the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, please visit our website at campbellca.gov. Please contact the city clerk's office for applicable deadlines and application information at 408-866-2117 or email clerks, CLERKS office@campbellca.gov. And I would encourage people to join in with our city and engage in our processes and join these commissions. You can certainly help out within the city. The DMV is providing an automatic 1-year extension to California's age 70 and over with a non-commercial driver's license with an expiration date between March 1st and December 31st, 2020. While the new extensions are automatic, drivers will not receive a new card or paper extensions in the mail. For more information about this and other DMV services, please visit dmv.ca.gov. The City of Campbell has partnered with the County of Santa Clara to offer COVID-19 testing. Community testing is available at the community center's Orchard City Banquet Hall the first and third Thursday, that's this week, the third one, throughout the month of September. Testing sites are not designated to test individuals with symptoms of COVID-19. For more information about testing requirements and testing sites, please visit sccfreetests.org. The Santa Clara County Aging Services Collaborative Caregiver Team is proud to present the 10th annual Caregivers Count Conference. This annual conference educates and supports families who are caring for elderly loved ones. There will be a virtual 4-part series event from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. on September 19th, September 26th, and October 3rd. Topics include emotional well-being, paying for care, technology tools, reducing stress, and dealing with parents and residents. Free event registration is available at caregiverscount.net. The Campbell Museum proudly presents History at Home and Tasty Tuesdays. History can be brought to you via Zoom. Each month, History and Home will feature a guest speaker who will present a topic, share a slide presentation, and answer questions. You may be at home, but we can certainly taste, talk, and treat ourselves to special servings from local businesses. On the last Tuesday of each month, the museum will host the Tasty Tuesday. Each month will feature a different business that will include links to pre-purchases that are available for tastings to be sent directly to your home. Then via Zoom, we will meet and taste and talk. There is a nominal fee of $10 for History at Home and Tasty Tuesday. Registrations can be purchased at campbellmuseums.com/shop. Currently, the USPS, the United States Postal Service, are having problems with mail delivery or lack of mail delivery. If you are having such problems or have concerns about your mail, please send me an email at susanl@campbellca.gov with a short description of your issues. I am consolidating our citizens' complaints and working with Congresswoman Anna Eshoo, and she has asked for backup information from our people in our community because she is going to be making a formal complaint again to USPS. Thank you. Please continue to visit the city's website at campbellca.gov for up-to-date information on COVID-19, adjusted city services, canceled events, police department services, the Campbell Community Center, and business resources. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is our consent calendar. Are there any council members or staff that would like to pull an item from the consent calendar? I see the city manager. Anybody else wish to pull an item? Seeing none. City manager, what item are you going to pull? You're on mute.
I apologize. I'd like to pull item 9 for some clarification before we make a recommendation for approval on that.
Okay. If there's no other people wishing to pull an item, I'll enter. Oh, Ann?
I just wanted to ask, did you call for oral requests?
Yes.
You did? Did I miss that?
No, I asked if anybody had an oral request.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I didn't hear that. So,
Okay, sorry.
sure.
Should I
I
speak
saw,
louder?
no, I just missed
Okay,
it.
I'm sorry. Okay, Liz, I
And
see
with that-
your,
With that, Madam Mayor, I would recommend that the council approve consent calendar items F through 8, if my numbering is correct.
okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, city clerk, roll call, please.
Councilmember Waterman,
Much on me. Aye.
Councilmember Vivey,
Aye.
Councilmember Resnikoff,
Aye on 1 to 6 and 8 and recuse on 7.
Vice Mayor Gibbons,
Aye.
Mayor Landry.
Aye, that motion passes. Okay, on to consent item number 9, the J.D. Morgan Park Improvement Project. City manager, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. Before I recommend the council's consideration of this item, I did want to clarify, this project is a high-profile project that is on a very tight timeline to continue to comply with the county grant requirements for funding this, a great deal of this project. And in that note, the plans that are presented, those consideration were just received last week. Staff is continuing to work to resolve a few technical things that we see with the plans that would include utilities, elevations, footings. And we're also looking at resolving some language in the specifications regarding claims. The specifications do have updated language in there that complies with state law regarding claims, but staff's also looking at some additional language in the specs regarding that. The reason I point that out to you is all of those things we believe can be resolved and staff's committed to do so. We believe we can do so and commit to the council that those will be finished before the bids are solicited to the public in the coming week here. So with that, I just wanted to make that clarification. I'd recommend, if appropriate, the council move forward with the recommended action on that item.
Okay, just to clarify what you just commented on, is the council would approve the going out to taking the plans and specs out to bid, but that prior to going to bid, these changes will be incorporated. The reason we're doing this a little out of order is to meet the county deadline for the grant, correct?
That's absolutely correct. And if something unforeseen happens and we can't achieve that, we will come back to you if something dramatic has to change. Those comments that I made on the utilities, elevations, footings, and the specification language are all things I've discussed with the appropriate staff members, and we're confident we can resolve those issues before the bids hit the street.
Thank you. So at this point, I'll entertain a motion unless there's any council, oh, I forgot. Is there anybody in the public that would wish to speak on these items? City clerk?
So yes, we do have somebody that would like to speak on item 7.
Oh, we skipped back over. I'm sorry, I didn't ask about that one.
Sorry, I just now got an email.
Okay, so how do we deal with that? Because we already approved a motion to approve this.
Yes, that item is already approved. And since they were not, if they were not online at the time that you called for oral request, you do not even have to allow them to speak at this time. However, it is within your discretion to hear them out, but the action would still stand as approved by the council.
Okay, so we can take the person's oral request, and if need to, we can redo our motion.
Right, but
Madam-
I would recommend that you finish the motion that you have before you first.
Okay, sorry. All right. So do we have a motion on item 9?
I'll move consent item 9. Approval?
A second?
I will second with the I guess I don't know how we have to add it, but the clarifications provided by the city manager are incorporated into the motion.
I'm
Is
fine.
that,
I'm okay with that, sure.
okay. So you're a second, Liz? Okay, roll call, please.
Councilmember Waterman,
Aye.
Councilmember Ivy,
Aye.
Councilmember Resnikoff,
Right?
Vice Mayor Gibbons,
Aye.
Mayor Landry.
Aye, thank you. So at this point, we are going on to unfinished business. Item number 10. This is to,
Mayor Landry, I think you're supposed to take your speaker.
oh, sorry. Okay, City Clerk, can we have the speaker for item 7?
Steve Saunders, are you ready?
I don't hear Steve.
I see him. Steve?
Is he on mute?
He,
There. Now can you hear me? Unmute.
Yes,
Can you
we
hear me
can
with the
hear
phone?
you. Hi, Steve.
Excellent. Thank you, Mayor, Council. I'm not sure you'd be changing anything after I have my say anyway. Basically on item 7, we finally got some details about the Major O bonds, which I've been kind of interested in figuring out how those would actually work for a long time. I have a couple informational questions and then kind of comments on tax rate policy.
Hang on, Steve, real quick. Someone is not on mute and there's a clicking, tapping sound. Okay, go ahead, Steve. Oh, maybe that was Steve clicking. Are you there, Steve?
I keep getting muted.
Okay, sorry.
Page 54 has a graph that shows basically some tax rates over time. And I would be interested in understanding what real estate tax base growth rate was assumed in producing this graph, because it's kind of critical. And there is going to be kind of a slush fund created 2038 to 2042 to pay off that one bond that isn't callable, and just an idea of how that gets handled. I'm assuming it's just kind of a fund the city carries along, but if there's anything special about it. And finally, when you look at the data, what it shows is that the average money that the city is putting out, or the taxpayers have to come up with for the first set of bonds, is about $895,000 a year after the first 2 years. And that covers interest payments and whatever bonds are coming due that year until we get out to 2038. And then we have an uncallable bond. And after that, when we pay that off, we have some more, about 6 million worth of callable bonds. So that these graphs make sense if you have that constant payment, which essentially says we're going to pay the same amount, or the taxpayers are going to come up with the same amount of money every year throughout the whole length of the bonds. Yeah, I would say that, you know, somewhere out of the 2030 to 2040 range, when these facilities have their maximum useful benefit for the community, and then they're not steady, they're fully established and well set up and not yet getting old.
Okay, Steve, I'm sorry, your time, time's up. Can,
basically I would.
Oh, you went on mute again. Can I ask staff to reach out to Steve and follow up on his questions?
Yes, I believe we have Steve's email contact, and myself or Finance Director Fuentes will reach out to him, see if we can answer his questions.
Okay, great, thank you. Thank you, Steve, for commenting. At this point now, we're going to move on to item 10. And this is to consider a funding agreement with the County of Santa Clara for isolation and the quarantine program. And we have a presenter, our Acting Director of Recreation and Community Services, Natasha Bissell. Hi, Natasha.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of council. So this agreement was brought to council 2 weeks ago for your consideration, and there were a few questions, and we're bringing it back tonight with the option for council to authorize the city manager to execute an agreement with the county. One of the concerns during the last meeting was the use of the CDBG funds and how that gets allocated across the urban cities that are within that group. As of now, it's my understanding that it will be just used on a first in, first out after talking with the county about this a little bit more extensively. The town of Los Gatos has opted out of being in this agreement, and other cities are still pending. And to date, only Campbell and Morgan Hill residents have executed the need for financial aid assistance through this program. So that was one. And the other concern was whether or not there'd be future agreements with the city that are needed in regards to the project Room Key. And at this time, that's not a discussion point that has been brought to our contact with the county as a program that will be reaching out to the cities. So those were the two key items from the last meeting's presentation that were brought back for your consideration. And so there weren't any other modifications or changes to the agreement since you saw it last. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have tonight. We also have Keely from the county on the call as well.
All right, does any council member have questions for Natasha or Keely? Rich?
So, yeah, I mean, I guess I'm just trying to figure out, I was talking to Brian about this a little yesterday, the scope of how big this would be. I mean, I know Brian was looking it up, so he may know the answer, but just the number of cases the city of Campbell has of COVID since it began. I mean, is it a big number, a little number, a medium number?
I'm not certain if specific to our zip code, how many Campbell residents have tested positive. I think
I have that, Natasha.
Go for it.
So Campbell is 312 cases.
Okay.
According to the county. That's over time since March.
6.5 months.
About 19,500 cases countywide.
Right. That one.
Deaths are at 283. So I would presume that we're some portion of the population, probably a very small number.
Thank you.
Any other questions by council? Councilmember Bybee,
No questions, thank you.
Councilmember Resnikoff, and then Liz.
Thank you. Just a few questions. So I just want to make sure I understand this, that this program helps people who might have to quarantine. It doesn't help people who aren't positive but have no income since March or so that are having trouble. This is just specifically if you test positive, you could even be asymptomatic, but you have to quarantine.
That's correct. You still have to, there's a lot of qualifying particulars for you to receive any sort of assistance as well. So if the first step is proper isolation and quarantine. The goal of the program is to eliminate people trying to decide, do I quarantine or do I continue to work because I have to pay the bills? And so when that becomes the deciding factor, or I can't properly quarantine because there's too many people in my house, and that's the deciding factor, that's when the program coordinators will step in to vet out what do you truly qualify for in your financial state and what services can we supplement.
So it's somebody who is already working remotely that was asymptomatic, still working, would they qualify for this program?
If they were still capable of working, but unable to isolate properly, let's say there were multiple people living in the same household and they didn't have their own room and bathroom. In this instance, they would probably qualify for a motel, but not necessarily any financial assistance because they're still able to work.
Okay. And then the other question, just maybe it's more philosophical. Why, I guess, to me, the county provides social services, and we, through the state and county, we pay taxes through taxes. We give them revenue, taxes, bond measures, whatever. Why are we paying fixed costs for a program that may or may not result in money going back to current residents? I mean, we don't know if anybody's going to apply, or we don't know if the money's going to go elsewhere first. I'm just surprised that we have to pay to be in when essentially these are the kinds of services that the county would provide to city residents.
I'm going to hopefully let Key unmute and help answer this question.
Okay.
You know, I think because we're in unprecedented times, Councilmember Resnikoff, that this is a program and a social service that they aren't probably properly prepared to manage. And that's my best guess at why they're asking. I know, you know, CDBG funds can be used for a lot of things, but the motel costs, they can't be used for. And so that is part of that. Case management in any situation is a very timely effort to understand and truly vet out what those needs are. And it can take quite a bit of time. And so, that's just from my experience with adult services and dealing with case management. But if Key, you want to pipe in?
Yeah, hey everybody, it's Key. Thanks for bringing this item back and having the conversation. So it is true. I think the county does administer a broad array of safety net services. And some of those safety net services are indeed sort of mandated programs. So CalWORKS, general assistance, things like that. But I think some of the programs and services that we're talking about here are sort of not necessarily a sort of a legal responsibility of the county. But I think it's necessary for several reasons. One is to, you know, help individuals isolate and quarantine. And the whole purpose of that is to slow the spread of COVID-19. And that's why, though, we want to work collaboratively with the cities, because with the CDBG funds, that's why we're recommending a lot of CDBG funds for the financial assistance portion. And the CDBG funds, as Natasha mentioned, can't be used for the hoteling. But, you know, the county, that's why we recommend that we administer the hoteling program as well, so that we can also claim the FEMA reimbursement, because I think that's a significant burden. And I think there was a question about, hey, how do we know Campbell residents are going to use this? Well, already 2 Campbell households since June 17th have used the hoteling program. And then another 6 residents have been received support at home. And 5 of those residents have received or in the process of receiving some rental assistance.
Okay. One last question, if I could. You mentioned FEMA. There's something in our staff report that says the city could request reimbursement from FEMA, but it would take some number of years. If the county made these expenditures up front, could the county also request the same FEMA reimbursement?
Yeah, the idea is that the county is incurring these costs, and then the county, for FEMA reimbursable expenses, is submitting the reimbursement request, and then what we're billing or invoicing the city is sort of the match that's required of that.
Okay, thank you.
Liz?
Thank you. I appreciate the questions from Councilmember Resnikoff. I had some similar ones. I did come to the conclusion that this is an above and beyond ordinary program, so that there are administrative fees that would not normally have been budgeted with the funding that we provide in our regular taxes allocations to the county. So I was okay with that. The primary reason that I would, I'll skip that because that's conversation. The question for Natasha is, I got a late email from the city manager, and I just offer to reconfirm. I asked what other cities were participating in the program, and the update is Los Altos Hills, Saratoga, Morgan Hill, and then Campbell are all proceeding or have already approved participating in this program. So far, Campbell and Morgan Hill are the only two cities that have had residents participate. Los Gatos and Montecito are not proceeding with the agreement.
I think that's correct. And Key, correct me if I'm wrong.
That's correct. And those are, of course, the urban county cities. And then the other cities that are proceeding are San Jose and Milpitas.
I have a question. I thought that San Jose and Milpitas was in a different pool of money.
They are. So it's separate from the CDBG funds. He was just kind of noting outside of the county, other cities within the county that aren't part of the urban cities.
Okay, thank you. At this point, I would ask if there's anybody in the public wishing to speak on this item. City Clerk?
We do not.
All right, thank you. I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to council for discussion and or a motion. Liz?
I was offering support to do this primarily because one of the biggest challenges in controlling COVID is having people who are particularly asymptomatic going to work and infecting others. And there needs to be some help for those people who must work and or cannot segregate to a safe place. And I think it's appropriate to engage in this effort as a commitment of the city to reduce the spread of COVID.
Thank you.
Support it.
Rich?
I'm kind of in the middle on the issue. Long discussion with Brian yesterday about it. You know, in the end of the day, if you do the math, what do we say? There's been 300 cases total in, I think, 6.5 months, and we're on the, if you believe all the stats in the Merck every day, we're on the downslope. So there's not going to be a lot of cases, and then you say on top of, let's say there is 300 more cases in the next 6 months, highly doubtful. And then you say, okay, who's, you know, has financial problems, who has issues where they can't isolate from other people, and who's willing to, you know, step up and say, I need help. And you get probably similar numbers than we saw before. It's, and is it better, you know, those we can take care of. I mean, I think the county certainly, traditionally a county responsibility, but, you know, given the money they're asking from us, I would think we could have our own program and do a fine job of it. I just don't see, it just seems we're setting a strange precedence with the county on this one. So I get a little bit nervous about it. I mean, I could support it, but it's just really, you know, county has an $8 billion budget. We have a you know, 60 million or so budget, and things like this. But it's going to be small numbers. I mean, maybe it's 5 people, maybe it's 7. I would be surprised if it's too many more. With the money we're talking about, I suspect we can put these people up for a couple of weeks at the Ritz-Carlton and still have money left over, literally. So we got to be careful about how we're spending this and where it's going. Yes, we could have a second whatever of the virus, but we can look at that if that happens. And other than that, again, unless we see things start to go way up, but we're certainly not seeing that in the stats. Thank you.
And I would just make note, this goes through December, correct, Natasha?
That is correct.
Yeah, that's even more, you know, we're already midway through September. So how many cases? Again, you have to go through all those levels, saying first, catch it. Second, they don't have the financial means to go on their own. Third, they're willing to, you know, some kind of contact tracing says you got to move out. And they say, okay, I need financial help. It gets down to small numbers. And I don't
Okay.
know. It's kind of like you're buying insurance and it always costs more generally. than-
Okay, Liz?
Thank you. Just for a clarification on Councilmember Resnikoff's question, from the last meeting, my understanding is that the city is out, I'm going to say, $12,000 to commit to the management of the program. None of the other money is going to be spent if there's no demand. We get it all back. And the advantage of having eligibility for the CDBG funds is that money will be spent before any city money is spent. So am I correct that this isn't just a blank check of $99,000 or whatever it is? It's we get it all back if it's not used, or we get whatever portion is not used, we get back. Am I correct?
That's correct. And it's not a pay all up front either. We're paying the admin costs on a monthly basis as time goes on and being billed for any usage in the other areas as those cases come to light. So the estimates in the agreement are they're projections based on data that they have. And if we have a continued upward trend, this is their projections on how many potential Campbell residents would need assistance.
Any more discussion? Paul?
Yeah, thank you. I'm not disputing the importance of the need, but I think this is a program that helps a very small target market when we're ignoring, and the county is ignoring the bigger picture of people, many more people who can barely keep their apartments. So that bugs me a bit. I think the county, frankly, should pay for these kind of services. I understand it's only $10,000 or $11,000, but this is the second time in about 2 months that we've picked up, I think, about the same amount of bill. We did this with the senior meal program where the county said, we're funding extra meals, which was great. And all of a sudden it disappeared, and it was our obligation to say, we can't cut senior meals, so we'll eat that. The problem with doing that is that our next item is going to be to talk about funding a $4 million deficit. Well, it's only $10,000, it's only $11,000. We have a 60-some million dollar budget, and the county's got an $8 billion budget. $10,000 to us is quite a bit more. The county should be able to find this in there, and I think not be charging us for this. And I think it's also through December, so presumably if this goes on, our costs go up, right? Because administrative costs continue. So I really think that this is the county's role to play. I don't know why we're paying up front to be in a program to help residents. I think they ought to be looking at a program to help more people to stay in their places. I think we should be burdened with the cost of this. Thank you.
Okay. Is someone want to make a motion or have further discussion?
I'm ready to make a motion. All right.
Yes, go ahead.
I make a motion that the city council authorize the city manager to enter into a funding agreement with the County of Santa Clara for the administration and execution of a countywide isolation and quarantine support program.
Do we have a second on the motion? Ann, Rich? Paul? No second on the motion? Do we have another alternative motion? City manager?
Madam Mayor, let me just step in here. This is an item to consider funding an agreement. It would take a positive motion and approval of council to approve the agreement. If we don't receive a motion that's approved by the council to do that, then this item will fail.
Okay. So we did not get a second on the motion. So at this point, the motion failed. And so we are not going to participate in this program with funds from the city. Okay. Thanks, Keely and Natasha, for your presentation. So we will now move on to new business. And this is to receive an update on the unaudited fiscal year of 2020 year-end general fund actual revenues and expenses. And we have our finance director, Will Fuentes, to walk us through this. Hi, Will.
Hey, hello, council. I'm just going to share the screen and stuff here quickly, and then I will get to the report and update. Okay. So tonight is to give a monthly fiscal update. And we will be doing an update each month on the second council meeting of the month. And in April and May, we came to a council to give an update on the potential general fund deficit in fiscal year 20. And through April and May, we projected between a $4 to $5 million deficit in total. So tonight's report will give an update on the deficit, plus also discuss a couple of additional items that are shown on the screen here now. Okay. So in regards to the audited deficit for fiscal year 20, it is currently around $4 million total. It's close to what we discussed with council in May, but there were a couple of differences from the May update. In a total, when you compare the May update to what we saw by the end of June, our income was less than projections by about $600,000 in a total. And on the screen, and then also in the report to council, it goes through the details of what income streams were above our projections, and then also what income streams were below our projections. So I'll keep it up on the screen a bit, just so that you are able to see the details. But they're again also explained in the report as well.
Sorry, I was on mute. Okay, Will, if you keep it up, I can't see if the council members are asking to speak. So can you unshare for a little bit, and if we need to, we can bring it back up?
Yeah, I can. I was going to continue to go through the slides, but I can also take questions as well now.
Okay, so why don't we pause your presentation since we have a lot of it in the packet, and unshare your screen for a bit. And then I will ask council if they have any questions at this point. And Rich?
Yeah, sorry, well, I'm not sure where to ask the question, but I mean, so currently our general fund reserve it's 15 million now, or around 15 million? I thought we were quoting a smaller number. I think
You went
you're,
on mute. You went on, there we go, Will.
So if you also take into account our PERS reserve account that's under the general fund, the total amount does increase by about 2.5 million in total, and I took it into account because it's the general fund reserve account that's also under the council's control. It could be spent to pay down our future first costs, which are expected to jump up in the next couple of years. But it's also under the council's discretion that it could be put towards different purposes as well. So I felt that it was also appropriate to also include the PERS reserve in the total as well.
So what, I mean, when we're talking about drawing down the general fund reserve, I mean, if it's, you know, that high, if it's looks like on graph 2 that it's moving towards 20 million before it starts to come down, then when you start talking 4 or 5 million, it isn't a big swan dive. When you say it's less than 10 million or something, which I thought we were at, then it's a much bigger percentage you're drawing down. And then you've got 2 lines, a blue line and a red line. So we have a target reserve that we're aiming to get above 20 million. At the same time, we said projected, I mean, actual, but looking towards the future projected, it's not going to be anywhere near the target. So I guess that's what you're trying to explain later on. If we want to get the red line closer to the blue line, we need to take some other action. Is that the motto of graph 2?
Correct. So under graph 2, it's the total general fund reserve accounts. There are a couple of reserve accounts under the general fund. In a total, at the end of fiscal year 19, they equal in a total of about 18 million. And so if we were to attempt to meet the reserve targets over a time, it would need to be about a $20 million amount in a total across all the general fund reserve accounts. And on graph 2, it shows one potential outcome that if our cost trends continue, plus if the one time cuts in a cost that we made in fiscal year 21 were to return in fiscal year 22 and into the future, then that is a one potential outcome. Should the economy also take some time into the future to recover as well.
I know Ann and I get the discussion with you on the finance committee, all these reserve funds year after year confuse me. Some are included in the general fund and some are separate, but that's a battle for the future for other council members other than me. Is there a number, I guess, that's general fund, so it's not PERS general fund reserve and it's not this general fund reserve, it's just sitting there
Yeah.
for economic downturn fund, whatever we call that.
Yeah, so I mean, they really should be taken in a total. Although they serve a slightly different purposes. They are all under the council's discretion and control. And so again, although they may serve different types of purposes, they are under the general fund though. And the $18 million amount at the end of fiscal year 2019. It's a good number to use. But I mean, it's also under the council's discretion that if they were to want to combine, any of the general fund reserve accounts in the future to meet just a one or two distinct purposes. That's also an option, and it could reduce a confusion in the future as well.
Okay, Rich, you're good. Do we have other questions? Paul, Ann?
So I'm still kind of grappling. I talked to the city manager about this a little bit, about the, first of all, the $4 million deficit, and now we're being asked for a 10% contingency for possibly $400,000. So that's one thing that I'm trying to still understand. And the second thing, in table 1 of your report, you've got the estimated revenues and expenditures, and while the are impacted with what you put in the report, our expenditures continue to grow up. And I don't understand, I understand that part of that is probably labor costs and things that we've committed to, but it seems that why aren't we at this point looking at reductions in the expenditures?
Let me jump in here, Will, if I can. And Councilmember Bybee and I talked about this, and I've talked about this with some of you. I think that's the crux of this discussion. Should we do nothing in future budget years, this is one scenario of what could happen. I think what staff is suggesting is we have to be continue to be vigilant with managing our expenses as we talk about budget items. So I would anticipate if you're looking at graph 1, as we're in fiscal year 21 and that red line starts diverging above the green line in future fiscal years, that's assuming we take no actions to mitigate our costs going forward. So I think what we're suggesting is we need to continue to do that as we do our budget next year. As we sit here today, that's what we're projecting that work may be next year when we do budget to close that gap. And I think the more that we do that, as that ties into Councilmember Waterman's comments on graph 2, that red line dropping down and dramatically use of the reserves will virtually be minimized, if not eliminated, by us managing that budget and expenditures going forward. So this is an example, but I don't want to underscore the fact that we still have got work to do and we have to continue to be vigilant with managing our expenses going forward, including next budget year. It will probably be a difficult year too to continue to look at how we manage those expenses.
Ann, do you have another question?
So what are those expenditures that are going up? Is it labor costs? Is it, can you explain that?
So there are a couple of things that cause the cost to jump up. There's the PERS cost, also healthcare cost. But the key is that in the current projections in a fiscal year 2022 and into the future, it's also taking into account that the one-time cuts that we made to cost in fiscal year 21 that they could return again. The thing that we really need to also take into account is that we've kept some vacant and open jobs unfilled. And I mean, we can continue to do so, but if those jobs were to be filled and they were to return again, then our costs could jump up again. So it's taking into account that the one-time cuts that we made in fiscal year 21, that those costs could return again in fiscal year 22.
Thank you, Will.
Paul, did I see your hand up, and then Liz?
Thank you. So I think at this point, I think my question's answered. I think, Brian, you answered it. I think I'm saying the same thing that I heard from council members. I looked at graph 1 and thought, this is only if we immediately go back to full spending. So that's what you're saying, right?
Correct, yes.
And I don't see that as an option. I mean, we're surviving in 2020 by making some drastic cuts. It makes no sense to put all that spending back just because X number of months passed. We're going to have to manage the expenses and the same thing. And what we don't know is, and I don't think you can predict, is it 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? We don't know. But I guess we have to have the discussion because I don't away from comments my question was going to be about that graph, but I don't see that graph as being relevant because it's not reality. I don't see how we can live under that kind of deficit forever for 4 more years. So I get into discussion on that, but thank you for clarifying, and that it may not reflect, shouldn't reflect reality for me.
Okay, Liz, you had questions?
I appreciate the discussion so far. I'm going to try and go back to the initial presentation, which is on the closure of the budget for fiscal year 20. I appreciate the discussion on the reuse of reserves because it's going forward, because it's totally relevant to where we are with this discussion and how much we're going to use, and going from 4 million to 4.4 million. So, but I'm going to focus on the 4.4 million right now. I think it's in the report, or our city manager said, we're not going to have final numbers until December. I do find that a little distressing, but if that's the way it is, that's the way it is. I'm uncomfortable adding another 400,000 to the amount. I read your report several times. I think I sort of get it, but I won't know till we see the next. We have to have another round of discussion. If all you're doing tonight is asking us to authorize as much as 4.4, but we don't know how that money is being spent. So for the purposes of the subsequent discussions, I don't see a choice because the money's already spent and the numbers have to come in to tell us where we're going to end up. But so, I mean, basically, am I right? That's where we're at. We're at the point where you're saying it's going to be between 4 million and 4.4 million. And we're going to have to use reserves to cover it. That's basically the first question.
Yeah, let me jump in, Will. It would be our intent, Vice Mayor Gibbons, that as we move forward and those numbers get audited, if something has to be moved from one fund to the other, then it may affect those numbers. We're committed to report back to the council as we get those numbers audited, so it's clear both to the council and the public exactly where that money is being spent. If something is identified in the audit that affects that $4 million deficit, we will report back to you.
Well, forgive me, I don't care about that right now. What I care about is the bottom line. And what I'm hearing is that it's going to be 4 to 4.4 million, and the accounts may switch around, so be it. The second part is where's the money coming from, which is what Councilmember Waterman was asking. And I found it difficult when all of the reserves got conflated into one total number. We've never talked about using the PERS funding before. So that was a surprise. I'm trying to ask a question here. I don't want to continue the discussion. So let me say I have questions about conflating those reserves and making this decision, but I don't see where we have any choice right now.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, so Deputy City Clerk, do we have anybody wishing to make a public comment?
We haven't finished the whole presentation though, Mayor. We got a long way to go.
I'm sorry. Will, you want to continue with your presentation?
I can. Yeah, I can. But I'll attempt to be quick, so that council's able to get to discussion and questions as well. Okay. So just give me 1 second on that again. All right. Are you able to see the
Yes.
screen? Okay, great, perfect. So I'll go on to here. So again, how do you compare income at the end of June to to the update in May. It was less than the May update by about 600K in a total. But also at the same time, our total expenses at the end of June were also less than the May update by about 600K in a total. The details are on the screen, but also in the report itself as well. Just give me 1 second. So again, in a total, the unaudited general fund deficit at the end of 20 is currently about $4 million in a total. And it's typical that each year it does take a couple of months through December to go through our books and also for our external audit of a firm to go through the books to confirm the amounts and then also to put the capper together. So although it's not 100% complete until December, it's the typical time frame. And so we're requesting a 10% cushion just in case that any amount that we see in the end of June, by the time that we put the capper together and we close the books 100%, there could be a certain accounting adjustments that we need to make. So again, if there are any accounting adjustments that increase the deficit amount, we will return to a council with the details. But we're requesting a 10% cushion today, just so that we are able to close our books timely, and to keep the process progressing. And again, in the report, it showed a chart that showed our current projected expenses and income, both in the current year, but also into the future as well. And again, it's one potential outcome if we were to take any additional steps to either control our costs, to keep in place our current cuts, but it's also that if we don't, if we also don't take any steps to increase income, or also if we don't get any aid, or if the economy doesn't recover quicker than we expect. So I won't go over this chart too much, but it's again one potential outcome that could occur, and I'm telling the council tonight and today, so that we're able to go throughout the discussions over the next couple of months, and into the budget preparation process for fiscal year 22, so that we are able to take steps to get the blue and the different lines to come together. So there are a couple of different ways to ensure that we've got ensure that we've got a balanced budget each year. We can either reduce our costs, or we also can increase our income. And what we're proposing to do is to take a comprehensive and strategic approach that both would address our cost structure, but also explore if there's any additional income streams that are either a new or a current ones that we could current income streams that we could increase as well. So I put on the screen a couple of potential ideas about new income streams that the council may want to discuss. We're also open to whatever other ideas on income streams that the council may want to discuss. But again, the key from our view is to take a comprehensive and strategic approach that both takes into account our cost structure, but also takes into account any potential income streams, as well. We can certainly take the steps to cut our cost structure, but at a point, it could also be a good idea to address our income streams as well. So I won't go into great detail here, but the economy the economy in a total continues to grow. Although over June and into July, the growth it's definitely slowed a bit, and it's a concern. So it will be a thing that we will need to continue to pay attention to. But in terms of jobs, Campbell's a bit better than both the county and state. But there are again concerns about the economy in general that we will need to pay attention to, and I'll continue to keep the council updated on those concerns. So again, in
Will, let me just jump in here. Let's, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Will. I think we're to the point, maybe we could take questions. I think
Yeah.
we're back on the total. If that, I'm sorry to cut you off. I think, yeah, that's perfect. You put up that last slide. Thank you.
Okay. So I can't see everybody all at once, so I'm going to slide back and forth. Does anybody, oh, thank you. Liz, your mic's off. Do you have a comment or questions?
I do. If you want to start with me, thank you. So I'll go back to my first comment. I think combining all of these topics into one discussion item is difficult. So I think there really are separate topics that we could discuss. So the first one that I indicated before is the one about the 4 million to the 4.4 million. And I don't believe it's in the staff report. If it is, I apologize for missing it. But are you now saying the primary reason that you want what you had phrased as the $400,000 contingency is simply to allow you to close the CAFR after the auditing in December? I did not get that out of the staff report, but is that what you're now saying?
So the contingency amount is to take into account any accounting adjustments that could need to occur from July through December to close our books.
This is yes. So Will, the simple answer is yes. You're putting it in there as a contingency so that the books can be closed and the CAFR complete.
Correct, yes.
Okay. All right, so that's new information for me. So the second part of the question for this is, I said, I believe we have 5 or 6 different, reserves. And we have the emergency economic fluctuation reserve, and then the emergency reserve. And one of them has a requirement that if it goes below a certain amount, it has to be replenished within a certain period of time. So I will go with, I don't want to look at all the reserves at one time. I want to understand what reserve account we're proposing to use for this closure of the 2020 fiscal year. So which account are we using?
So the current proposal is to take from the general fund emergency, the general fund emergency reserve account. And it's a set at a 10% of our general fund income.
So, so if it's at, I'm just going to pick a number, 6 million, that's 10%. So we're going to take it down 4.5 million from that 6 million. So that emergency fund is going to be down to 1.5.
Correct, yes.
Okay. And does that fund have the requirement to be replenished if it goes below 2 million?
I don't, but we would also propose that over the course of the year, that we discuss different ideas.
Yeah,
About
I appreciate that, but
about how we could increase
replenish it.
again. Yes.
I appreciate that. Okay, so that's my understanding of the first question that's in your presentation tonight. The second one is, where'd it go here? We're number 11. I'm sorry, I'm just switching so I could read it. So that the City Council receive an update of the unaudited fiscal year end actual revenues and expenditures and approve a resolution. Okay. This second one is to discuss the long-term fiscal projections and strategies for replenishment. Okay, so if I follow your discussion on that, again, I read the staff report a little differently, so I'm going to say to you what I think your presentation now is saying. What you have done, particularly in graph number 1, is to show, I'm going to say, the worst case scenario of expenditures going back to what we're going to call the normal, plus all the cost upgrades that happen every year, versus the requirement then to take the revenue down, the reserves, take the reserves down. Is that where what you were trying to do?
Correct. And so it does take into account the potential a worst case that if our cost were to return to the way
Yeah.
that they were.
Right. You said this, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay. All right, so, okay, I think those are my questions. I have discussion, obviously, but those were the questions. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? No? Okay, now, City Clerk, do we have any public speakers that wish to participate?
We do not.
Okay, thank you. Bring it back to council for further discussion and or a motion. Liz?
No one else has any questions?
Well, we're into discussion now.
I'm sorry, no one else has anything to say? Rich does.
Rich is raising his hand.
Well, I mean, so there's several, I agree with the Vice Mayor's line of questioning as far as the reserves thing, but I think there's 3 fundamental questions that I think we might debate them all. So where do we think this economy is going, VWL, whatever? I mean, I'm obviously more optimistic than some others are here, but I think we're seeing signs that some things are going to come back. And that may take another year, but it's another year. But a lot of stuff in the next let's say 6 months, will look a lot better. It sounds like restaurants will open and stuff. So that's sort of question one. And then we're going to have some issues. So what do we want to do about it? Just, as Will's shown there, just ignore it, and eventually it will probably take care of itself. Number two, raise revenue, which I suspect is going to be very difficult in the short term. And number three, to cut costs. And if so, what do we cut? And that, that's the list that will is there. So I agree with the vice mayor. I mean, we should sort of focus, okay, what are the things we want to focus on? Cutting costs, raising revenue, and there's some things about there about selling land and things like that. And then it would take another meeting, I would think, or two to sort of iron those things out. So I think there's a lot of things to talk about within it. It's a fairly big lot of things in there. I agree that as I the vice pointed out, and I also think some of those graphs are very difficult to understand. And we've had that before, again, when we were looking at CAFR year after year. There's always something called general reserve, which contains a lot of reserve funds. And then there's things that are not part of the general reserve, which is also other reserve funds. And I think we've been asking for years, something, just show me all these reserve funds. But it sounds like the vice mayor got it down to a fairly, I think that $6 or $7 million number is probably right. I don't think we're at a crisis yet, but I think we do have to look at, we certainly can't, that graph that shows with doing nothing, our income is going to go up 20% in 5 or 6 years. That sounds outrageous. I understand about pension costs and all that, but we got to get control over that. We probably have to get control over that no matter what happens. So those are my 2 cents. Thank you.
Okay, so the recommended action has 3 components. The first component is approve a resolution authorizing the use of general fund emergency reserve to balance the revenues against expenditures for fiscal year 2020. Can we at least come to some consensus on, is that what we're going to do? We're going to approve using the reserves for the 4.4 million. Paul, and then Liz.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Could you tell if you want, do you want us to comment on all 3 or just one at a time?
Well, let's tackle one at a time, because
Okay.
the discussion is going to get more evolved than just the approving the budget deficit from last year. So
To answer your question then, for this fiscal year, to get through the deficit we have, you're asking now about using reserves, and I would say yes.
no, I'm asking the motion, the recommended action has 3 parts. The
Correct.
first one is approving and authorizing the use of emergency funds. So do you support that?
Yes.
Okay, can I see some head shaking? Do we support using the reserve? And
Could I clarify?
yes,
There's no dollar amount specified. I think we have to put in there 4.4 million, up to, not to exceed 4.4 million.
yeah, that's where I was getting. Anne had made a comment about the extra 400. Do you support the 4 million or the 4.4?
I support the 4 million plus the 10% contingency, with the stipulation that if that is needed, that we get a report back at a public meeting of where that money and why we needed that extra money. And looking at the resolution, it does say that, just to clarify, it does say 4 million and then the 10% contingency. So I think the resolution is correct.
Okay, and Rich, you support this first part of the 3 things? Liz, so I seen the shaking of heads. No, Liz?
So I'm sorry, I do have a further clarification. I'm not sure what Councilmember Bybee just said. I didn't see what she just referred to, so I'm not sure I'm quite followed that. But my comment is,
It just, Liz, it's in the resolution, not under the recommended action. The recommended action just says approve the resolution.
okay, all right, thank you for that. And then my comment is, and I think this is important, others may not, I wanted it to make clear that by using the general fund emergency reserve, fund that can be drawn down to a certain point, if I understood Will's answer, that can be drawn down to a certain point. If it goes below 2 million, it has to be built back up. There's no choice to keep on using it. It has to be built back up. So if a motion anything more than it is the emergency reserve fund, but I just want to make sure we all understand what that means.
Okay, so we're not making a motion yet. I'm just trying to break this out. So it sounds like there's a consensus on the first part of the recommended action to approve the resolution of the 4.4. The second part of this discussion is to look at the long-term fiscal projections and strategies to replenish the general fund. I guess there's only two.
No,
There's only two.
I don't think it's, sorry, I'm not sure that is exactly what's being asked. It's
Well, it's worth to just.
It's discussing the projections. So.
Right, discuss the fiscal projections and strategies for replenishment of the general fund reserves.
I appreciate that's what it says, but I don't think that's what we're actually being asked to do. So I would just offer that. I think that's not on target.
So what do you think is?
So we've all talked about, I think, the graph number 1. And, that graph has a lot of assumptions in it. It has a lot of assumptions about the economy bouncing back. And per Councilmember Waterman's comments, the news, since some of this data was done at the end of June and July, we had another uptick in August. And people are saying their businesses are going to stay closed till the middle of the year or all of next year. And we don't know how many businesses in Campbell are open or are permanently closed. Risk to the assumptions that reflected in that red line on graph 1 for what our expenditures are going to be. And, as far as the revenue goes, I'm also concerned because in 2021 budget, they've added in the 520,000 that we got for CARES. That's a one-time revenue source. It's not going to be going forward. So I think that's a little deceptive too. So before we discuss strategies for replenishment, I think we have to talk about strategies to reduce the use of reserves, if not eliminate it. And I think that's a big difference between that and discussing the long-term fiscal projections and with reduction of expenditures. And then the next one is strategies to replenish. I think those are two totally separate topics.
Okay, and I think that's what Councilmember Waterman was saying, where's the economy going and what to do about it. And then the third is about cutting costs and looking forward to the future. So do we have anybody else that would like to be part of it? Paul or Rich or Ann, do you want to add your thoughts? Rich and Liz, I'm sorry, Ann and Paul have not yet. Paul, you want to make some, or Ann?
Well, of the alternatives that are presented in the staff report, my emphasis would be on, initially would be on expenditure reduction and looking at the structure of our city and the programs and services we provide and determine what our core services need to be and make cuts appropriately there. The revenue enhancements that are discussed, that are presented. Those are all things that we've done again and again, other than the utility users tax, which is a bit of a challenge to do that. I would support the transient occupancy tax increase because that's fairly straightforward, but I would support the sales tax add-on at this point due to the economy and the uncertainty of it. And again, all of those are tied to an election, and we missed our window for that. And short of that, we would have to have a special election, and that would be a costly thing to do, to hold a special election for one or more of these tax measures. So that's kind of where I'm at. I really think we need to look at the expenditure side and try and augment where we can with the revenue side.
Okay, I'm hearing a lot of feedback noise. So if people are not on mute that aren't speaking, please mute yourself. So Anne, I want to just make sure I heard what you were saying. You talked about reducing expenditures. You supported the TOT and that related to the short-term rentals also?
I don't know that that's necessarily part of the TOT. I don't know if you can lump that in to the TOT.
Well, the conversation in the memo is that right now we're not collecting the TOT tax on short-term rentals. And that would, I mean, I don't know how much that would add, but that would.
I hadn't really given.
You went to mute.
I hadn't thought about that. I was more keyed in on the TOT paragraph.
Okay, and then you also said you would not support, what was the last one?
The sales tax add-on.
Yeah, okay. Paul, do you have, want to chime in here?
Thank you. So I agree that the way to look at this is expenses to start with, and reduce expenses, obviously maintaining cuts that we have until we need to go the other way. As Councilmember Bybee just said, looking at programs and deciding what's essential, what's not. We also may have some programs that we can bring back that weren't fee-based full recovery before. Maybe we have to look at saying, then they're going to come back only if they cover themselves and pay. And as an example, if we are losing money, I'm just picking on this without knowing the numbers. If we are losing money on the use of the public fields, perhaps those fees have to be up, or we can't afford to have those fields in play. So we need to look at stuff like that. I don't support the revenue measures. I think this is not the time to put taxes on people, even on the hotels. These places are trying to survive. I don't know that we're going to get that much out of the short-term Airbnb rentals. I guess I'd have to see the numbers. And if we don't get a lot, then the administrative cost is going to eat up a lot of it. And also, we may be hurting people that need to do that to survive right now. So it may be a little harder for them to rent. So I'd like to stay away from the revenue measures till we know where we are with coming back from the pandemic and things like that. I am interested in the real estate appraisal that was talked about in the packet. I have no idea if that's a good option for us or not. We've talked about it before. It's certainly something we should look at and see, do we have property that could be sold? In that case, we not only get money for it, we lose the cost of maintaining it. So if we have some property that could be sold and whatever the functions are at that property can be picked up elsewhere, it's certainly of interest to discuss. And I don't know what those are, but I think the real estate appraisal and inventory would be a smart place to start. So I think the focus is on expenses. If it gets worse, it's more expense cutting than we've done. It's certainly at a minimum keeping the expenses cut where we brought them down to already, and being really careful when we bring things back, that we bring it back and we can afford it. And if it's fee-based, I want to see full fee-based recovery. It's the only way to do this and come out. And that graph one, as I said before, that's not an option. That's just not an option. And fortunately, we control that, right? We don't have to let it be an option. So we're going to have some discussions on, if we do this, what does that graph look like, and come up with something that wasn't what it was before, but isn't what graph one says.
Okay, I have a question for both of you that's just spoke. Are you wanting to look at further cuts in this budget year of 2021?
So start with me.
Yeah,
So I'm not looking at further cuts now. I think we're going to get updates as we go along the way and find out where we are. So everybody here, I think, has different opinions of what's going to come back when. And I personally think the restaurant's going to come back sooner than we think because we're just destroying an economy and a group of people. I think it's the mindset's going to change. I just believe that. But I'd like to see what happens if we do that. And do we pick up more sales tax? Do we pick up other revenues? And then make that decision. As of today, I don't want to do that. I want to cut more. That's what the reserves are for right now. I reserve the right, if I can use that word, to do it later.
okay, and do you,
Excuse me, we're gonna have this discussion through the year, right? We have to.
right, so I'm just, some of this is cutting in and out, so I just want to make sure I'm hearing what you're saying. So you're saying we're not going to deal with the current budget year right now. We're going to get feedback in a little bit of time, correct?
We use the reserves to keep moving forward. We get feedback and then we take actions as appropriate. And in the meantime, I don't personally want to implement these revenue measures that are in the packet, but I would like to consider that property appraisal. And I think that's something we should do even for future use.
And what about the fee recovery for this fiscal year?
Meaning, I'm sorry, fee
Well,
recovery.
you had mentioned about fee recovery.
What I'm saying is if we're bringing programs back, so my example, we cut the soccer league or so, and then the county did or the state did. But if that comes back, we can't run at a deficit. If we bring back the basketball courts indoor and gym, for example, and let's say we're running at a deficit, and that may just be staff costs. I think we ought to adjust our fees to say, if this is a function the city's offering, we're not losing money on it. If we're awash, it's a great thing to provide. Same thing would be, for example, if let's say we were losing money, I don't know if we are, on the Heritage Theater. Well, then the fee structure should be such or ticket such that we can break even at least or make an expected profit. Let's not lose money on services as we bring them back. That's what I'm saying.
But not address anything right now.
Unless I'm not aware of what we're doing now. So let's say non-essential services, we've really cut back. What we're doing now, I'm thinking more of things like there are optional services that are good for the community, like recreational and things like that. We have to be aware of the cost, and that cost has to be loaded. It has to include staff time and overhead and all that. We can't lose money on those. We just can't afford it.
Yep. And Anne, did you want to comment about to do anything this fiscal year right now regarding expenses?
No, I'm okay with the budget that we adopted, but going into the next budget cycle, we're going to need to look at expenditure reduction somehow, some way. And whether that be in eliminating programs and services, we're going to have to do that if we're not going to increase revenues to any great extent. And the reality of doing that right now is not the best time, for one thing, and it involves elections, and there's a cost to do that, and we've missed that opportunity. So I will say that we really need to take a hard look at our core services and really have those decisions about what's essential and what's nice to have.
Okay, and Liz, were you raising your hand?
So I think I probably didn't phrase it the same way as everyone else, but I'm saying a lot of the same things that others are saying. When I said we need to discuss the long-term physical projections, what I was saying is expenditures. We have to be prepared to understand our expenditures. The diagrams presented are not acceptable to me. I do think I am the optimistic pessimist here, as always. I do think when we get our mid-year adjustment in December, January, we're going to find that our revenue has gone down. And at that point, when staff comes back to council with that update, if necessary, they need to be prepared to make recommendations on cuts at that time. I hope we can make it this whole year, but I'm nervous about it. I think that the reason I'm nervous about it, I'll just say, is the same I've said over and over again. I think sales tax revenue is going to stay down. The transit occupancy tax is staying down. Gas tax is staying down. Our funding from Measure B is down. There's a lot of sources of our monies that I think staff is trying to be sensitive to the economic environment, but I think there's still too much optimism there. So that's why I'm so concerned about getting expenditures down and being realistic. I do think we need to separate out the economic reserve or the reserve accounts, not conflate them. I do not support using the PERS funding in to help with this economic situation. I think that should be used for PERS. I do think from all we've been reading and the presentations from the League of California Cities, our PERS costs are going to go way up in the coming years. And I think we need to have that specific set aside for the reason it was intended. So in terms of strategies, I would like to see some strategies to reduce the fiscal expenditures a little more clearly. The strategies to replenish the general fund, to me, are different. I am supportive of applying the TOT tax to the short-term rentals. Quite a few cities in Santa Clara County do that. Sunnyvale did it, I'm going to say, at the end of last year, so maybe about a year ago now. And they negotiated where all of the agencies, Airbnb and BOBY, whatever it is, they do all the administration, and all they do is send a check for the transient occupancy tax. There's little effort on the part of the city, and that's the normal arrangement with other cities, to my understanding when I looked into it at that point in time. I think we could start that at the mid-year. I think that's something we could look into. It would take staff time, which is cost, but I'd like to point out that doing an appraisal of city property is also going to take cost. So we have to be thoughtful about that. And see the rest of my notes. Yeah, and I do think that in the end, we do need to leave reserves available. Unfortunately, we know that more disasters can happen on top of disasters, such as the fire, such as earthquake, preferably not hurricanes, but there are things that can happen, and to deplete our reserves is not what good financial responsibility for me is. So I do not support drawing down on all the reserves at all.
Rich, do you have, you want to chime in, Rich?
So I agree with a lot of what the Vice Mayor said, but you know, again, I know we talk about that a lot with the VRBO and Airbnb, a bunch of others that won't collect them. It doesn't matter if it doesn't take too much staff time. I'm okay with it. It's going to be a fraction to a fraction, but that's okay. Sunnyvale is a large city that has a lot of short-term rentals. We're not really a high-tech mecca here that's going to tend to have short-term, but whatever. I don't see that. But I mean, at some point, and we did this on the priority session, but we got to come back to it. What are our priorities? What are our not, as far as, you know, we talked about it already. Nobody likes to talk about it, but it's the real elephant in the room, not renting out, you know, charging TOT or something. So, you know, we have a lot of, let's call them assets, but, you know, we've got things, we got services. I'm trying to be careful what I say here, because I know it gets people going, whatever you say, but certainly the police are very important to people. The public works, community development are very important services that people depend on. We have other things that are less important, and maybe some of those need to be made smaller. You know, we do have, I suspect per square feet of city space, we have the largest community center anywhere around. Do we need it? I mean, as a community center, it's great. As renting something out to schools and stuff, is that really our responsibility? And especially the rates we rent it out, because they'll yell, we can't find it. Right. Well, we got to start having some reality sessions on that. There's some other things, and I know when we get into it, people get particularly, my God, we can't say that, but we do. We do have to say it. These things are more important. These things are less important, and the world's not going to end if we give a lower priority to some things and don't support them. Some things that may be used in one way, maybe we, let's say it's used historically now. I won't get into the details. And we say, well, why don't we keep it historical, but allow it to be an office building? So there's a lot of things that can we do there that are a lot more money than the few $100,000 possible. I suspect it's not that much that we're going to get from TOT. So sooner or later, if things don't start coming back at a good rate, we're going to have to start looking at those. I don't see that we have any other choice. Thank you.
Thank you. So I do not support using the PERS funding. I think those costs are just going to keep going up, and the projections from the league has said that. I'm not sure what an appraisal of our property is really going to do, because I don't know how much surplus property we really have. I'm kind of going through my head of what properties we have, and other than our very large community center, we've got the service yard. How many other properties do we really have, and what would the appraisal cost us to do? I do support the TOT for short-term rental. The last time I talked to the community development director about this, they do fall under the TOT. Their transit occupancy, and other cities are, like Liz said, the Airbnb type businesses do all of the math and do all the collection of the taxes. So I do support looking at that. Does that accumulate to more than 50,000 or 100,000? I don't know. But at this point, dollars count. Let's see, what was the other one? The fee recovery we talked about already. And I do not support the increase of the sales tax, because we're not be able to do it for 2 years. That's out in 2022. Okay, so I'm looking at the strategies for replenishment of the general fund reserve. What I've heard from everybody is about reducing our expenditures. It's going to be difficult to increase our revenues. And I am really concerned about utilizing our reserve funds. So as of today, what I'm hearing is we're not dealing with the current budget right now, that we're going to wait to the mid-year, December or January, to see if we do need to cut any services or add some back. And that what's really left is our long-term strategy of how we go into the other following years. Rich, I see did you want to say something?
Hold on. No, I'm done.
Okay.
I'd like to clarify one thing so that I understand that we're going to be having these monthly updates on COVID-related financial, where we're at, where our revenue's at. And if the picture starts to go south, I was always on the impression that we would be taking some steps to address those shortfalls if they're significant. We had anticipated in the budget. Is that correct?
So yes, my understanding, because the discussion was whether we do anything. I asked, do we do something now to look at the reduction in expenses versus a couple, like either next month or the following month? I'm trying to get us to where we're making decisions tonight. And so I haven't heard that we're making any decisions about cutting revenue or cutting expenses right now. Correct?
We're monitoring it.
We're in the monitoring mode. We want a monthly input and feedback. And what I also heard was when the mid-year budget comes to us for adjustment, that they don't just come and say, we're X dollars short. They come and say, we're X dollars short, but here's are the ways specifically. These are the programs. This is the priority. These are not the priority. So that we have more information at that point. Is that, I heard Liz say that, Paul, Rich, is that kind of where we're heading? You guys would agree? I'm barely seeing head shaking there. I'm trying to get us to look at making some kind of motion here. Let me go back up here to the.
I don't think you need a motion.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do we really need a motion here? We're just.
Well, we need a motion. We do need a motion on the general fund actual reserves. We all shook our head, but we did not make a motion on that part.
That's the only thing we need a motion on. But may I ask one clarification?
You went to mute. Okay, there you go.
I know. I don't think we need the answer right now, but wherever the comment about adding a sales tax, I don't support, but I also always understood Campbell was at the state max. So be careful going forward on that topic, just to be sure.
I thought the state max was 10% and we have a 0.5 flexibility. No?
Not
Okay.
unless it's changed in recent years. I haven't followed it meticulously.
Well, and I also, there's been some level of discussion a while back about the state adding a percentage. And if they did that, then there's no more room for us to go up. Right?
It's kind of moot right now, so let's.
Right. We're 2 years out of anything that we could do for a sales tax.
There's a lot of
Okay, so
measures.
I'll entertain a motion now about the use of the reserves, authorizing the general fund emergency reserve to balance the budget.
All right, I'll make a motion. The city council receive an update on audited fiscal year-end general fund. I think we did that. Actual revenue and expenses. Approve resolution authorizing the use of the general fund emergency reserve to balance revenue against expenditures in fiscal year 2020 and discuss long-term fiscal projections and strategies for replenishment of general fund reserve. I think we did that.
So the motion should end at the fiscal year 2020. We're not making a motion on discussing the long term. We did that.
I think quite a few of the stuff our discussion, right?
Right, but
We
the
did
only
re-
thing we need to make.
Don't need that either.
The only thing we need to approve is the expenditures of the general fund reserve. Okay,
So
so
moved.
we have a second on that?
I'll second.
And then, Liz?
May I ask a question, a friendly amendment? Can we add in there the, to the amount of 4.4 million? And that the staff will come back to us with a final accounting?
I see Bill turning on his light there.
The only thing I wanted to point out is that the resolution that's proposed already has the 4.4 million number in it. If you wanted to add to come back, that certainly is something you could do.
Well, I was responding to Councilmember Bybee's earlier request. So whatever she wants.
And
I'm okay with the understanding that if we need the extra 400,000, they'll bring it back.
okay, so we have a motion by Rich and a second by Paul. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Waterman,
Aye.
Councilmember Bybee,
Aye.
Councilmember Rosikoff,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Gibbons,
Aye.
Mayor Landry.
Aye. Hey, you guys were on a roll. We're on a 5-0 roll tonight again.
Almost.
All right, so we're going to move now to our second to last item, which is number 12. And this is the request for City Council for direction regarding the Planning Commission's initiation of a zoning code text amendment regarding reduced parking. And I see Paul or is Daniel, it looks like Senior Planner Daniel Fama is going to have us a little presentation.
Good evening, and I will keep the presentation little. This is an item for the
Kiko.
this is an item for the City Council to provide direction to staff regarding the Planning Commission's initiation of a zoning code amendment to adopt reduced parking standards for properties near public transportation. As the city zoning code allows, the Planning Commission did take action on July 28th to authorize creation of a zoning code update to look at new parking standards for projects near public transportation. However, as Planning Commission was informed, because this action effectively constitutes a new work plan item for staff, this item would need to go forward to the City Council for your authorization or rejection of the Planning Commission's action. Just a couple notes as identified in the staff report. We're seeking direction whether or not the council agrees with the Planning Commission's understanding of parking and one that if there's an issue, but also if you do agree whether or not this item needs to be addressed at the immediate moment, or if this is an item that could be rolled in to the more comprehensive zoning code update that would follow adoption of a new general plan. And with that, I will take any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Boy, you took Boquito very seriously there, Daniel. Hey, Rich, you got a question, comment?
Yeah, I got a quick one. I've seen you guys, I've seen you guys recommend things that we pass it and that you not recommend. I'm not sure I've ever seen you say we can either. Does staff have a recommendation on this, or they just, you guys weren't in the mood? I see Paul smiling.
I got smiles on faces here.
Or was there such a battle within the commission, that the community development group, that you said, let's just.
I could jump in.
Sure.
You know, the planning commission is pretty compassionate about, or passionate about a lot of things in Campbell, and I kind of see this pendulum going another way. They're very progressive and they have a lot of ideas, and they see different flaws in our process. So we kind of looked at this as just our opportunity really to be a conduit of what the planning commission is saying without casting an opinion. We tried to be balanced. If anything in the staff report, we're probably weighing to, you know, why don't we just wait until we perform a comprehensive update to the zoning ordinance and look at it in a more comprehensive manner. But if the council, if you feel and agree with the commission that this is an urgent thing, that the majority of projects that are non-residential that go before the commission routinely ask for parking modifications, maybe this is an opportunity to address that. But, you know, staff's opinion, this isn't really an urgent thing. It could wait, but you know, our job is really to carry forward what the planning commission wanted.
Any more, Rich? Anne, do you have any questions?
So was there any discussion or explanation at the planning commission meeting with staff and the commission about priority sessions and work plans and workflow and how those types of things evolve?
You know, there could have been some surface level. I didn't really want to get into the weeds with that. Otherwise it would look like we were kind of resisting what their wishes were. But you know, the commission is routinely changing, and I think staff, we probably need to do a better job informing them of the bigger picture, and that's certainly something that we can agendize and have a broader discussion at the planning commission, that there is a priority setting session, and how could not only the commission, the other boards and committees, the advisory bodies to the council as a whole probably should be equally informed.
Okay. Anne, you have more questions? I'm sorry, we're in questions. No? You're on mute.
No, sorry, I don't have anything else.
Okay, Paul?
Yeah, so Director Camoy, I'm gonna try to make this statement into a question to make it fair.
Okay. Try.
So in the future, is it possible, here comes my statement, to take a position on items like this? Because I think it's valuable for us to know that staff feels, for example, that this would impact resources or this isn't a priority. That's actually important information. And I don't view that as not bringing forth what the planning commission would like. It's bring it forth is doing that job. But I would like that input from staff to say, we don't think it's the right thing to do. I don't think that's a negative to the commission. But even if it is, it's a very big positive to us. So I added a, could you do that in the future to make my.
Well, certainly, and you definitely opened the door for us to opine, if you will. You know, in the staff report, we did mention that, you know, redirecting staff beyond our day-to-day certainly will, you know, stretch our resources. So we all need to be cognizant of that. And in certain respects, you know, unlike you, the council, the commission's not in that level, right? They're looking at just, you know, how do we make the world a better place? And, you know, this is something I think we need to do a better job letting them know the bigger picture, and that's on us. So I certainly will do that, but I agree. This isn't, we look at individual projects case by case. They're all viewed on their individual merits. Some projects we allow for modifications of parking, some don't. And it's just kind of case by case. I don't see this urgent. I see this as something that we can table until we perform the comprehensive update to the zoning ordinance.
Okay, my just a takeaway from me is I think that input's valuable to us. So I like to see it in the report. Thanks.
Will do.
Liz? Questions, Liz?
I don't have any questions. I do have comment.
Okay. I don't have questions. I'll wait for comments. So at this point, Deputy City Clerk, do we have anybody in the public that would like to speak on this item?
We do not.
Okay, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back for comments. I'm going to start on this one. Our strategic priority goal for this year is comprehensive long-term land use planning. That's a mouthful. And our GPAC said, here you go, council. Here's what we've done. There's these outstanding elements like the housing and the climate action plan. And to me, comprehensive long-term planning is, we heard from the Planning Commission. We appreciate their forethinking and raising their hand and saying, what about this? But I see this as melding this into the general plan update. And I also hear staff's concerns about workload. And in the report, it does talk about this could be 2 years of doing this. So I would prefer to have this become part of the bigger long-term planning general plan update. So now I'll take comments from anybody else. And Rich, do you want to start?
I agree with you.
Oh, wow. Okay. Ann?
I agree to a point, but I also think that there should be some discussion with the commission and the priority session so that it all melds together and everybody's on the same page, and that commissions who want to bring forth something like this do so at the beginning of the year so that it can be folded into the priority session and the budget process, and we can discuss it and say, yeah, this is a priority, this isn't a priority, and go from there and have a dialogue about it instead of just, you know, having it land and say, we want to do this. There is a process that we should be following.
Okay. Brian?
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Bybee. And we spoke about this, and I've spoken about this and been working with the mayor and the vice mayor to kind of recreate this process that apparently the city used to have in practice, and over time it has slipped away. And I don't want to get back to that as a more comprehensive approach for setting priorities so we don't have ad hoc requests throughout the year. And that entails having the planning commissions, as Councilmember Bybee said, come to the council at your January meeting, and for them to present their ideas for work plans and their concepts for the year. And then that folds into the strategic planning and the priority setting for the council later that month. So hopefully that will help with that. It's not going to prevent all these ad hocs, but I think it will at least give us a more comprehensive approach and provide the council some direction to the commission on their priorities for the year.
Rich, I see you raising your hand again.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everyone saying, but it's important when you say comprehensive that we get a lot of input. So I was concerned, especially with the GPAC meeting, that they really didn't spend a lot of time with developers, for example, and get, which feeds into this input. Are they able to survive with us forcing them to put all these parking requirements in everywhere, not just in certain zones? From what I hear, talking to a lot of developers, it's difficult in this day and age. So maybe that's another input that we have to make sure. Now, whether we get the input, staff gets the input, the planning commission gets the input, somebody should be out there getting the input. I think the planning commission is probably closer to it as these projects come up. So I'm not sure it's just a liberal thing. It's also a business thing. If you can't, you can't make your nut and build a building with the amount of parking we're requiring, and that's going to cause us to have a whole lot of bare land the next few years, and that's also not good. I think we need a lot of different input. Thank you.
Paul?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with everything I've heard. I mean, I think that council should stick to the priorities that we set within the year. And I think if the commissions do the same early on as was brought up here, then we don't have any one or two people directing that commission into a different direction, perhaps wasting their time, or perhaps coming back to us in something that we've all determined we don't want to do. So if we can incorporate, not just for planning, but CIC, Parks and Rec, all of them, HPV, and get them to agree as a whole what they want to propose, then we can, at the beginning of the planning session, say, yeah, something we want to see or not, and save a lot of time, I think, and save a lot of staff use of staff time that may not be good use. So I'm all in favor of what Councilmember Bybee suggested and what the city manager proposed.
Okay, Liz, and then I have a comment, a discussion item.
So I'm in agreement that it needs to fit into the processes that are in place. I think it's an excellent example of how we've been speaking over this last year in particular of how to better connect and engage with the commissions. If there's a formal clarification that if they do have work plan items and things they would like, that they do come to the priority session. I think that would be a very positive step in all of that. So I'm agreeing not to go forward with it at this time and blend it in with the general plan and ordinance update. But I would like to offer, staff has alluded to this, in the 2009 timeframe, the Planning Commission, of which I was a member, spent a lot of time and effort with staff trying to understand parking. Now, the world was different in 2009. I clearly get that too. But I think it would take some of the angst away from the commissioners if they had a better understanding of why the parking standards were changed fairly dramatically at the time. They were reduced quite dramatically at the time. And the introduction of the parking modification plan was introduced. That was a major decision recommendation from staff to help the city and the developer come together and find a way to come up with the best parking plan. It was had a lot to do with, we were getting projects that were mixed use. And if you added all the parking requirements for each of the uses, the number got way too high. So there was the comment about how to blend and get 50% credit and all of that. So there was a lot of good conversation and thoughtfulness as to why the parking modification plan process was put in place. And I think it would help people understand that, so that, and this I will tell you is memory, but I think fairly accurate. The comment at the time was adding the process to the Planning Commission and staff at work effort was appropriate. It wasn't making extra effort. It was adding time, but it was coming up with the best solution for the city. And it was felt appropriate to spend that time. So there's good reasons, things change, but I think that might help the Planning Commission feel like it wasn't an arbitrary just add parking, parking, parking.
Okay, so what I'll add, and I want to follow up on Ann's comments. I had a roundtable with all of the commissions, I want to say a month or 2 months ago. And one of the suggestions was to have a liaison from each commission form a commission collaborative or somewhere where each commission has a representative. They all get together and discuss as a whole how our council priorities are implemented through the commissions and what they're going to work on. And then that could occur probably one meeting before the end of this year. And then that goes to their work plan to bring it to council in January to say, here's what we think we could be doing. Can you include this in your discussion of priorities? But I think it is important that these commissions do come prior to our meeting of strategic planning and goal setting so that we can include their input. And the staff recommendation in here says reject the planning commission initiation. I don't like the word reject. I would like to say thank you for bringing this to our attention. I understand individually that this is a topic of discussion. I do agree with Rich that this engagement with the development community is important. That did come up in our general plan advisory committee summary that we had 2 weeks ago, that things came late in the game. They didn't get to meet and have this discussion of these multi-category new zoning that we may come up with. So I don't like the word reject. I would like to say at this point, we would rather do this through the general plan update and that process as it plays out. Does that, I see Rich smiling over there with the thumbs up. So do we need to make a motion? Or can we just leave it as the comments we just made?
I don't know, Brian, I kind of would like to just a voice vote, just all in favor, aye. Just,
Okay,
that's what it sounds like. Yeah, you're not adopting a resolution, but at least getting concurrence that the council's on board with.
Yeah, maybe the appropriate motion would be that staff follow up with the commission and communicate to them the council's opinion that, as was stated by the mayor.
Okay.
So move. So move.
So we got a motion. Okay, do we have a second? Paul's smiling. You're seconding it, right?
Second.
Okay, we'll take a roll call vote then.
Just do all in favor.
Councilmember Waterman,
Aye.
Councilmember Bybee,
Aye.
Councilmember Resnikoff,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Gibbons,
Aye.
Mayor Landry.
Aye. Wow, we
Thank you.
are on a roll tonight. Thank you guys, everybody. So at this point, we're down, excuse me, to council committee reports. I have not had any committees that I've been on since our last council meeting. Does anybody have a committee report they would like to make?
I do. So I have 3 meetings I attended, actually, all virtual. I attended the BTA PAC meeting last week, and it essentially was one action item to approve minutes, and the rest of it was information only. Some discussion about the 237 Express Lane update. I attended the DCBA meeting last week, and they hadn't met in several months, so they finally had a meeting. And the last item or meeting that I attended was the Supervisor Chavez has formed an unhoused task force, and there are representatives from each council on that, and the first meeting was held this week. And it's really a 5-year plan to try and end, a community plan to try and end homelessness in the county. And this committee is been formed to kind of address one strategy to improve the quality of life and try and increase the number of unhoused beds available for unhoused people in the county.
Great, thank you. Thanks for being our representative on that committee. I know you volunteered.
You're welcome.
Any other committee reports?
Yeah.
I think I see some hands, but it's virtual backgrounds that waves around.
It's weird.
Paul?
Yeah, I don't know how to make the hand show at the background. Thank you. So yeah, I had a few meetings, had the JPA boards, the West Valley Clean Water and the Solid Waste JPA, those two I chair. Also TPAC, which is a treatment plant advisory committee. So the West Valley Sanitation District is part of this TPAC, which is the water treatment plant owned by San Jose and Santa Clara. And it accepts the water from Milpitas, Cupertino, and the West Valley cities of Campbell, Los Gatos, Saratoga, Montecito. So that comes up once a month. And then the Cities Association, I'll just comment on the Solid Waste Board. I think everybody's probably seen a month ago or so, your bill went up. We talked about this a few months ago. And the bills are up primarily right now because of all the changes in recycling. And we talked about how they used to get paid to send recycling out, and now they pay to get somebody to take it out. That's caused an immediate increase. We also are trying to finalize a new contract for disposal. So that is the contract with Waste Management that puts our stuff into the landfill. So new contracts, which are 10-year contracts, that increased cost. The major problem there is then we get into SB 1383, which is the organics recycling. I see the mayor nodding. Just to let everybody know, because the expectation is prices are going to go higher. They can do a contract for disposal based on what we know about 1383 today. It invariably is going to change. If the restrictions get more or higher, then they're going to come back and they're allowed to reopen the contract, which makes sense. So if that changes, they can come back for more to meet their costs. That will affect the additional costs. And these are state laws that we can't not adhere to. And then lastly, once we get through this, then in a year or so, we move to the collections contract, which is a 10-year contract with the people that come West Valley Collection Recycling, that you see the trucks that pick everything up. So we just look forward that these rates are probably going to go up because their costs are going up. The state is hitting us with regulations, and there are serious fines to the cities if the commercial businesses, for example, don't adhere. So we're dealing with that. The last part I'll say is it's an interesting time. A year ago, 3 of the 4 people on that committee, other than myself, were new. I've been there 6 years. We had somebody resign from Montecito Council that we lost. We have somebody in Los Gatos who's not running for re-election in November, and somebody who's running for a different office in November. So we're doing these contracts with other than me, with almost no experience. It's an interesting time, but it's all getting done. But the expectation, I just want to set the people, is costs are not stable. Unfortunately, it's the reality. Our only alternative would be to recycle considerably less. That would right now be against the law, but even if we could do it, people would be very unhappy with that. It's a lose-lose in a way, except for the recycling that happens, which is the positive side. So just a heads up, the changes will come in the future too. Thank you.
Liz?
Thank you. So the Association of Bay Area Governments has had a couple of meetings since we reported. Basically, I think I've said before that ABAG is being consolidated into MTC, and there's a lot of negotiations about how to keep the 101 cities fairly represented. And it's a difficult challenge. And that group is also going through the RENA number process, which is equally a difficult challenge, as we discussed a few weeks ago with the Plan 2050 discussions. The Cities Association Selection Committee has met. I was reappointed to the ABAG Executive Committee. And then the Legislative Action Committee noted that a lot of bills, particularly related to housing, were not completed in time for the end of the session. So they will all be coming back at full bore in the new session in January. The meeting had a presentation on Proposition RR, which is the 8-cent sales tax being proposed for the tri-counties of San Francisco, San Mateo, and Santa Clara to fund operations for, what do you call it, Caltrain. And we've been asked to have a council discussion and vote in support of Measure RR. So I would request that staff put that on the agenda in a timely fashion so that if council chooses to support it, it would be known at the time of the people voting. And then for the Silicon Valley Clean Energy, I have some notes here. A lot of people, we're all staying home a lot longer, a lot more, and we're using a lot more of electricity at home. So people's bills have gone up. There are services that are free that will help people review their homes and get energy cost savings. Simple things, switches that will turn off when you're not in a room, as well as light bulbs. Lots of things that can be done to help people reduce their electrical bills. Silicon Valley Clean Energy continues to be less than PG&E. We are caught in a vicious circle with PG&E having the retirement costs of their nuclear power plants and gas-fired power plants. And that is costing our customers a lot of money. That will go away in a few years, but it is costly. There have also been some articles in the news about clean energy and renewable energy as contributing to the power outages, the rolling power outages recently had, not the fire PSPSs, but the rolling power outages. That is in fact not correct. And there've been a couple of very good articles, including a recent op-ed by Supervisor Susan Ellenberg, as well as other articles in the Mercury News and San Francisco Chronicle, discussing how it is in fact not renewable energy that has anything to do with the power outages. It has a lot to do with much more complex issues of operating the system. And then the strategic plan was adopted, will be adopted at the next meeting. It's been discussed, and the city, the Silicon Valley Clean Energy budget has been reviewed and accepted. So that all looks to be good. And there's one other thing that's kind of interesting and maybe useful for other people's agencies. There's a prepay energy agreement where you can basically send out a bond based on your anticipated revenue for payment of electric bills. And that could save anywhere from 8 to 12% or $3 million on people's bills. And we're looking into that. I'll keep you posted on that, but that's something some of the other JPAs might also want to consider.
Great, thank you. I'm going to go back to what Paul was talking about with the recycling. I'm not sure, we keep mentioning 1383 about recycling, and people are going to end up having to do food recycling. And when they are coming out, I saw an email yesterday or today, they've come out with this toolkit that I think it's through the state, and that the agencies can start looking at how this is going to impact each city. We are to be collecting food waste. It goes and gets processed into compost, and the cities are actually required to buy back, I think it's 75% of what the composted material is. And so this is going to have an impact on our residents. And like Paul said, there's so many unknowns. This thing has changed and morphed since it got approved 2 years ago, I think was when the state passed this bill. So just heads up, you're going to start hearing more about this as it gets implemented. I think Paul was basically alluding to that conversation. So if nobody else has any comments, I get to hit my gavel again and the meeting's adjourned.